What's going on? Albie with Albie Fitness Gaming, and you've seen the title of the video, you know why you're here. Green-White Reclaimer Company. So this list here is inspired by this gentleman here, Fpawlusz. I hope I'm saying it correctly here. We'll go over his list and my list here shortly. I wanted to really talk about how I got to this type of deck in the first place. But I just want to give a shout out to him because the deck is the idea of this Dryad of the Grove with Valacuts and Elvish Reclaimer is something that he's been doing for quite a while now with the flagstones. You know, pretty much making flagstone like pretty busted card with Elvish Reclaimer, being able to not only generate card advantage but expedite your land drops, which is really good with the Dryad. But let's talk about the deck here and how we got here. So, before I go through my list, let me just explain how this started. So, originally, as you guys know, I play a lot of green-white decks, Hate Bear, Death and Taxes style decks. I was even trying the recent Selesnya Company deck, which is really busted. So I was like, you know what? Let me try something different. Let me try some green-white, like a green-white aggressive deck. So, back in the day, you know, you had Naya Company with the Wild Nakatos, Tarmogoyfs, Lightning Bolts, Loxodon Smiters, and it was more of a beatdown deck. So I was like, you know what? There's a lot of cards now that you're able to play a beatdown deck without having to really mess with your mana base that much, like the Naya Company deck. So I was like, I need a strong one-drop, right? So I was like, Elvish Reclaimer. Elvish Reclaimer is great because, you know, he can be a 3/4, and he fetches out lands. He makes your Knight of the Reliquaries also bigger. And he doesn't require you to play at a third color. So I was like, you know what? This is the card. So we're going to keep it very simple, right? We're going to go with the Noble Hierarchs, Elvish Reclaimers. We did already have the Flagstones in place in the deck at the time, because Ghost Quartering your Flagstone was really good because you were able to put 2 lands in the yard while at the same time not lowering your land count on the battlefield. So that was really good. You know, so we had that. We also had the Loxodon Smiters. So the deck was just more of an aggressive beatdown deck. We had the Thalias. We had the Voice of Resurgences. We pretty much had all the regular 2-drops. The Insectiles. What we didn't have were the Coursers and the Dryads, because again, the deck was just more aggressive beatdown. We did have a couple of Dromoka's commands in the original list, and I did play test around with Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf underperformed, obviously, in these type of decks. It's very hard to grow the Tarmogoyf to, you know, a 4/5 or a 5/6 where he's actually at his best, in my opinion. So I went online and I was like, well, let me see if anybody's been playing decks similar to this. Maybe they've been playing a lot longer than I have. That way we can kind of expedite the process of playtesting and seeing, you know, what are the best cards to play for this. So I ran into a few videos from this gentleman here, and he's been playing this combination of cards here for a long time. So I'm going to take his advice when it comes to this type of style of deck. And the thing that I saw that was very interesting, our list originally also had Path, by the way, but his list was very interesting because it uses the Reclaimer and the Flagstone a little bit different than our deck did. Ours was really just trying to get as many lands as possible in the yard as fast as possible because we were trying to be a very aggressive deck. He uses this more as a value, and with the combination with the Dryad of the Grove is just very, very good, especially with Valacut. It gives you a really good late game when you get installing. So his list had Birds, it had Tracker to generate a lot of value, Ravenap to bring back your lands, and then Coursers to gain life, and then Scavenging Ooze to gain life. So his list was very low on 2-drops and very heavy on 3-drops, which we see a lot in these style of decks with Collected Company because you just get more value hitting 3-drops than hitting, you know, mediocre 2-drops. So the list, you know, the sideboard obviously is very different. I'm not going to go into that. I'm sure he has his reasoning why his sideboard is the way that he is. Lands, you know, 3 Flagstones, 5 Forests, Ghost Quarters, Horizon Canopies, you know, the regular lands that you would play, just different amounts. But yeah, that's his list here if you guys want to check that out and play test his list. But let's talk about the one that I played and the changes that I made. So we kept it with 4 Flagstones. I really like this card in this deck. Like I mentioned, we are playing 3 Ghost Quarters because the deck is still a little bit more aggressive than his version. We can always ghost quarter our flagstones to just get more lands in the yard. We have Gavany Township, which he also had, Horizon Canopy. Like I said, like the lands, pretty self-explanatory. They all get played in this deck. The only real special land, I guess you can say, is the Flagstone, because not a lot of these lists play them unless you're playing Reclaimer. Although back in the day I did play like one Flagstone just because of the interaction with Ghost Quarter. You can put multiple lands in the yard without hurting yourself. Anyway, so we got the Elvish Reclaimer, we got the Noble Hierarchs. Those are our only 1-mana spells. I know he doesn't play a lot of 2-drops because he wants to be using his Reclaimer early, which is really good. But, you know, I said, you know what, I just want to play 2-drops. I just want to check it out, see how it works. I'm playing the 3 Voice of Resurgence. You know, that's one of my favorite cards. I do think that that card is very strong in these type of decks. It gives you everything you need as far as, you know, value and a beatdown creature. A 1 of Quasali Pride Mage, you know, utility creature. A 1 of Scrib Ranger, really good with your Reclaimers, Noble Hierarchs, Knight of the Reliquaries. The Dryad is good because you can bounce back lands and replay them for the Valakut triggers, and same thing with the Courser. So very good 1 of card. I believe he was playing a deck once that had like 2 of these, and then he moved to 2 Scavenging Ooze. We're playing the 1 of Scavenging Ooze, and then we have 4 Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. Thalia, in my opinion, is really good in these decks because these decks are not the fastest decks to get started. So using Thalia to slow down your opponent in order for you to get your game plan online, I think is very important. And Thalia and Voice of Resurgence do a great job to do that, in my opinion, and that's why I play them. Then, of course, we have the Skyclave Operation, three of those. Maybe we should be playing 4 because we don't have Path, but we'll see. Then we have 3 of the Dryads. I know he mentioned he likes to play 3 and not the 4 because multiple copies is not necessary, but you definitely want to draw 1. 2 Courser of Krufix, just a really good card overall with this deck here. It's going to gain you life. It's going to help you play lands off the top of your library for more card advantage. And, you know, with the Dryad, you can play multiple lands a turn. So it's just, you know, really good card in this style of deck here. And then, of course, Knight of the Reliquary, the best card in the deck in my opinion. And then that gets all put together here with Collected Company. The sideboard, pretty straightforward. We have our removal suite here. We have our 3 Path to Exiles. And then for creatures, it's just a bunch of hate bears for the most part because of Collected Company. We have the Archons. We have the Aven Mind Sensors, the Collector Ooth, a couple more Scavenging Oozes here, a Tireless Tracker for value, and then for those Tron and other multiple spells or turn combo decks, 4 Damping Spears. So let's go ahead and jump into the gameplay here. And we're going to be playing against our opponent John here, and he is playing Death Shadow. So this land here, this hand here looks good to us. We have pretty much what we want here. We have the Thalia, which I really like I mentioned earlier in these decks, because it allows us to slow down the opponent, in order for us to get our game plan online. And, you know, like I mentioned, this deck is not the fastest deck, right? So I do think it has a very powerful end game with the Valakuts and the Dryads, but it is a lot slower than a lot of the decks in Modern, so I think Thalia is a good choice to have as your 2-drop because you're able to slow down your opponent in order to get your game plan online. So here, we could wait to just fetch at the end of their turn so they don't know exactly what we're playing, but I mean, we have Windthwart Heath. I'm pretty sure they're gonna know that we're playing some type of green-white deck, and I just do this to save time. That way I can F6 here and just go through the turns, because our hand is pretty self-explanatory. We know what we're going to do on turn 2. We know we're facing some type of shadow deck with baubles, you know, so it's kind of like, all right, let's just get this party on the road. So opponent's stuck on 1 land. That's good for us. This is going to assure us this Thalia is going to be very, very good here. We're going to play the Flagstone here. You know, we don't want to throw in our Knight of the Reliquary on turn 3 if we do not have at least 4 lands in the yard, because we don't want it to just die to a lightning bolt. Although they also play Fatal Push, but I'd rather have it only vulnerable to one spell than multiple spells. So having the Ghost Quarter here is really good. So the option to Ghost Quartering our Flagstone is an option. But I think the best play here currently is we're going to have to go for the Dryad and just try to get multiple lands down on a turn to expedite our game plan. So Lightning Bolting the Thalia here, which is good for us. Like, that's fine. Again, Thalia, it did its purpose. It slowed down the opponent by a turn. To not allow them to play multiple spells this way, and now we have the Dryad, which is going to allow us to get a second land drop on our turn. So as you can see, we're like slowly getting ahead of our opponent with the cards that we're playing, and that's what you want to be doing with these green-white hate bear, aggressive, Death and Taxes style decks. So now we have the option next turn to just Ghost Quarter. Actually, at the end of the turn here, the best thing to do is we're going to Ghost Quarter our Flagstone, get two lands in play, and then our Knight's going to be a 5/5 as soon as he comes into play. And then we have another Flagstone in hand that we can play and also sack with the Knight. So here, they kill our Dryad. That's fine. It did what it needed to do. It got us our value. It got us our additional land for the turn. So that's fine. Again, these decks, these Death Shadow decks, they play so much removal that, like, your stuff is going to die early on. I mean, there's nothing you can do, but we have a lot of cards to combat that. So there goes that combination I spoke about, getting 2 lands in the yard while not losing any of your permanents on the field. So now we draw a Windswept Heath, which is just going to make this Knight even bigger. And we have a Scrib Ranger here to give us multiple activations on the Knight. Opponent has 5 cards at hand, and they have a Lurrus that they can put in their hand at any time here. So there goes the Lurrus in the hand. So they have Baubles in the yard, so definitely going to be generating a lot of value here. So we're going to have to speed this party up and get very aggressive, because if we don't start attacking them, and I know a lot of people are like, well, you shouldn't attack Death Shadow because then they're going to have big Death Shadows. And it's like, well, no, if they have Lurrus and they have Baubles, they're just going to like outgrind you. So we need to get in on, we need to start attacking immediately. So here we have the Qasali Pride Mage with Exalted, which is very relevant here. Here I'm thinking, okay, we need to get our opponent down to 2 life at least. We don't need to, we're not going to be able to kill them, but we have to get them at least to 2 life here, so we don't need to Ghost Quarter ourselves. And the reason is because it forces them to have an answer for the Scrib Ranger rather than having an answer for the Knight of the Reliquary. Because the Scrib Ranger with Exalted is going to be lethal. And for some reason, I knew that they weren't going to block. These Death Shadow decks, they love to take heavy hits because it expedites their Death Shadows. So, I was really confident that they were not going to block here. So like you saw there, I was thinking about getting the Ghost Quarter and just Ghost Quartering myself. But getting them to 1 or 2 is not a huge difference here. So I already knew, like, okay, they have to get rid of this Scrib Ranger or we're just going to win the game. And they really cannot attack into us right now because we have 2 massive Knight of the Reliquaries. And keep in mind, we can always untap our Knight on their turn, block, and then sack a land, get a Ghost Quarter ourselves again, and just have these massive Knights here. So opponent, dumps their hand here. An 11/11 Death Shadow. Another one. But that, honestly, at this, even if we didn't have the Scrib Ranger, well, yeah, the Scrib Ranger are actually really relevant because we can untap the Knight and continue sacking lands and have a bigger Knight than they do Death Shadows. But here, they tap out. I know, okay, the game's over. It is what it is. Scrib Ranger's going to come in for 2, taking us home. Extra Exalted here. I go ahead and read the Scourge of the Skyclave, making sure he doesn't have flying. A lot of these new creature cards are extremely busted, so I just wanted to make sure. So here, the gameplay, I mean, basically what we just saw here was just pretty straightforward green-white beatdown. Opponent here, I'm not sure what they're thinking about. Alright, so that's it. I guess they didn't want to take the damage, they just wanted to concede. Alright, so here we definitely want to bring in the Path to Exiles. We're going to want to get rid of some of those big Death Shadows. The Scourge of Skyclave is not the scariest. I think the Death Shadow is a bigger threat. I think. I could be wrong though. I don't really play that Death Shadow deck, but if any of you guys play that deck, comment at the bottom and let me know. Which card is more dangerous? Is it the Death Shadow, which that's what the deck is named after, or the Scourge or the Skyclave? Now obviously there are situations, but I'm just saying overall. So we remove 1 Thalia. We're going to go with more Scavenging Oozes because they do play Lurrus. And if the game starts getting a little longer, we do not want them to take advantage with the Bauble and Lurrus combination. That's very strong and very bad for us, especially since they play so much removal. So this second game here, I make a huge misplay and I end up just conceding and then moving on to the third. But we'll still talk about it here briefly. So this hand, is mediocre. It's nothing great, but it has the cards that we need to play the game, but it's one of those hands that can easily fall apart, to like discard or early removal, which these decks tend to play a lot of. So Swiss Spear here, the Bauble combination, building your own Delver. So we're definitely on a clock now. And things are not looking good for us. I'm going to fast forward a little bit through this matchup here, because honestly, it's just pretty straightforward. So we just play, we play our Noble Hierarch, we draw another land. Opponent has a Swiss Spear. 10 out of 10 they're going to have a removal spell because it's like 90% of their deck. Fpawlusz, Lightning Bolt here. Getting in with the Swiss Spear here. So here, the idea is to play Scrib Ranger at the end of their turn, be able to play Scavenging Ooze, try to gain some life that way. And work it from there. We're very far behind, and even with that strategy, like the chances of us winning are still very slim. But the misplay happens here, and I just misclick and pass my turn without playing the Scrib Ranger. And it gets to the point where I don't normally concede in games, and I got people who've seen me play. I will play them out because I'm a firm believer that these decks always play from behind anyways. But that misplay, we were already set back so bad, that just missing that opportunity right there is pretty much the nail in the coffin. And my train of thought right now is I'm not going to spend mental energy focusing on a game that, we're 10 out of 10 gonna lose. Let's just play the third game keep my mental energy higher and, and win. I have a lot of confidence that this deck can beat Death Shadow. I do think we have the advantage personally. So we're going to keep the deck the same here. The cards are good. So we're going to play first, of course. Alright, so this we cannot keep here. We're going to have to mulligan this. This is fine. We have 2 pieces of removal. We have a collected company to get us back in the game. And we have Ghost Quarter and Flagstone. But we're going to get rid of the Ghost Quarter here because we do need our double white if we want to play the Skyclave. Although we could just Ghost Quarter our Flagstone. But, I don't know how what's the difference? Like, was it really that much of an advantage of just getting rid of one of the Flagstones? So we're kind of hoping they don't have a very aggressive start here because our hand is pretty slow. But we draw the Thalia, which, like I mentioned, I love this card in these style of decks because these decks are, a lot slower than most of the other aggressive decks. And Thalia kind of pretty much evens out the playing field, right? It slows them down and allows us to get online and start doing what we need to be doing. Opponent passes here. We draw the Dryad. We definitely want to play the Dryad here. So these are 2 threats right now that the opponent needs to get rid of. Thalia is really going to, slow them down, which is good for us because it allows us to start getting ahead slowly. But here, like, I had a feeling they had Lightning Bolt or Fatal Push or something, but for some reason they, go after me. They bolt me to the face and not to Thalia, which I'm thinking maybe they just have a bunch of Death Shadows in their hand, and a bunch of creatures. So they don't really care about the Thalia. They'd rather take the damage, actually. That's what I'm thinking. That's what makes sense. Because otherwise, I don't know why you would just leave the Thalia. But yeah, so exactly like I thought. They just have a handful of creatures, and that's why they've decided to just bolt me and leave the Thalia alone. So here we have they have 2 creatures and we have 2 pieces of removal. Unfortunately, we can only play 1 at a time. But, like I mentioned earlier while I was sideboarding, I personally think the Death Shadow is a way more dangerous card than the Scourge of the Skyclave. So we're going to go ahead and take that. Also, if the Skyclave does die, they only get a 1/1, which is fine with me. I mean, a 2/2 is not anything to run home about, but I definitely think that Death Shadow is the more of the threatening of the cards here. Another Death Shadow here, and it looks like they're running out of gas here. But like I mentioned earlier, we expected them to have a lot of creatures simply from them bolting us and not bolting the Thalia. But our hand is well positioned for that. So neither Reliquary here. So here the question is whether we want to path. I don't think we want to path right now. There's no reason. We're not really too worried about the Loris. The only thing they can really get is now Spellbomb, but that's going to take a lot of mana on their end to, get that combination going of drawing off the Spellbomb and, also casting the Loris. So we're going to go ahead with that Reliquary here. The opponent is going to be able to wipe our graveyard, but that's okay because because we have the dry, now we can sack the flagstone, so we can start getting multiple lands in the yard fairly fast. We can also expedite our lands and get into this collected company. So we know the opponent has Aluris. We do not know what they had in hand, and we do not obviously know what they drew. Opponent plays Luris. Just, we expected that. Now we know they can't play any bolts or fatal pushes because we have Thalia, so most likely they're going to get rid of the now Spellbomb, and then they're going to, pick it back up with the Luris to start generating some value and try to control these Knight of the Reliquaries from getting too massive and out of control. So we draw a land here. I decide, let's play the Voice of Resurgence here. We're going to flood the board with creatures. There's no reason to really go into the Collected Company right now, because to me, I'm like, what I want to do right now is we have an advantage, and the only way that this advantage goes away is if our opponent starts drawing multiple cards a turn. So what we're going to do in my head is we're just going to play more creatures, and we're going to path them. We're going to path the Loris on their upkeep, and, basically just limit them from getting ahead. Because right now we're winning the game, and we can just keep it like that. Like I always mentioned, when we're playing against other aggressive decks, once we stop them from attacking us, that is the tell sign that we are ahead. That is, if you can't tell, once your opponent stops attacking you, if they're playing an aggressive deck and that's how they win the game, we're in good shape. And they're not attacking us because they know that on the crackback we can just decimate them. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of this Luris here, and now we have Collected Company next turn. Now, of course, they could have a Thoughtseize here to get rid of the Collected Company, but whatever. We can grow this Knight way bigger than they can grow their Death Shadow at this current time. One of the things I love about Knight against Death Shadow decks is, as you can see here, the opponent's at 9, so the Death Shadow is not that huge. But at the same time, 9 is not a lot when you have a Knight of the Reliquary out, right? Because you can grow the Knight fairly fast. Fatal push on the Knight here, that's fine. We're going to go ahead and just get rid of the Flagstone here and get an additional land. We get one off the Knight and we get one off the Flagstone. So we're going to be able to play that company next turn. And we grab another Flagstone just in case we hit a Knight or Elvish Reclaimer, because we are going to eventually start getting a Valakut here and win the game that way. Because we don't need to attack to win right now. We're well set up here to just get a Valakut and win. Our opponent's down to 2 cards, and the 2 threats that they haven't played are not really doing much. Collected Company here. We hit Knight of the Reliquary and Thalia. We'll just leave the Thalia in the deck. Although Thalia is really good in this deck, I mean, there are situations when that happens and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So now we have, again, the kill on board. And if they don't kill this Knight here, we're just going to win the game. We're going to be able to get rid of the Flagstone, get a Valakut, and then we can start using Horizon Canopy to draw. Hopefully, I mean, we literally just need to draw a land, or even a Scrib Ranger would do it too. And you know, this is what I like about this deck, is that you're kind of like an aggressive deck, right? But you lose a little bit of the aggression by getting rid of things like the Loxodon Smiter. But you give yourself a better long game, because right now, like, we're kind of like in a standstill. Even though we're ahead, right? They're not attacking us. We're not ahead. But we really can't attack them safely. So with the Dryad in play in the night and the way we have our board set up, we can kind of just sit back and say, hey, if you don't get rid of these creatures, you know, or start doing something to progress your game state, like, we're just going to win. Like, we don't really need to do much right now. So I really like that combination there. Opponent passes turn here with 2 cards in hand. They do have a fetch land, so they could have a fatal push for the Dryad here, so we have to be careful. But I still think that we need to go for it. If they do that, we do get a token off the Voice of Resurgence, because that card is busted. It is the greatest card ever printed in Magic's history, or any card history playing game. It's up there with the Michael Jordan rookie card from the 80s. But you know, and that's not an opinion, that's a fact. It's science, bro. So sticking to the plan here, we're going to get into that Valakut here. Trigger. And, you know, I think the opponent sees the writing on the wall. We decide to just go after the creature here because one Death Shadow is not going to do it. But, whoa, a 2020. Anyways, opponent quits there. Not sure what happened there. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure on what happened there. The creature went to 2020 and I don't know. But either or, we would have played another night. We would have then sacked the Horizon Canopy. If we draw a fetch land, we just win. But for sure, next turn they had to attack. We just chump block with the Voice, you know, chump block with something else, and then, you know, one of the knights either comes in for lethal if somehow they kill our Dryad, or we just fetch more lands out and kill them with the Valakut. I think that's what happened there. There was really no out for them. And I don't know. I don't play that deck. But if you play that deck, let me know if they possibly had an out. I don't think they had an out. Anyways, there is the deck, my friends. Make sure to check this gentleman out here. He's the one that inspired this whole movement of Elvish Reclaimer, Flagstone with the Dryad of the Grove. I think the deck's really good. It's, you know, it has a nice aggressive play to it. It has a good engine as far as card advantage, and it has a good long game, which you don't really see a lot sometimes in these decks if they're too aggressive. But I think it's like a perfect combination of everything, and the cards work really well together. I would like, you know, if I could talk to him, I would really like to talk to him about like the 2 Birds of Paradise. I mean, I don't know if the deck really needs 6 mana dorks if you're playing Elvish Reclaimer, but maybe the thought process is we're not playing any 2-drops because we just want to activate Elvish Reclaimer and start getting our value lands in play early, and then, you know, just focus on landing these powerful 3-drops. But, you know, I'm assuming that's probably why. But anyways, guys, let me know what you think about the deck. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like my video, and share. It will help out the channel a lot. And again, thank you so much for watching, and peace out.